Welcome to the Media Tastemaker Summit, produced by Taste TV. Today's panel is Tastemakers on television and in cable, featuring Darren LaShelle of Norcal Public Media with moderator Charly Kayle.
Are you in Sonoma or Napa?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our offices are in Sonoma County, right? So we're right outside of Santa Rosa in Rohnert Park,
Okay.
in Sonoma County. But of course, we broadcast to the entire Bay Area, all 9 counties, on a variety of different services.
I'm in San Francisco, and so it's still all part of the Bay Area. We're all one. And I just want to make a quick note that as we record this right now, the Northern California area is suffering some extreme, horrible wildfires that I know you're dealing with on a personal level, just because of the area that you live in. And then on a working level, with Norcal Public Media, having to cover it and not having to, but, wanting to provide for the community and do the very best they can. And so
Right.
that's a strain on it's got to be a strain on your resources.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're a small operation. We're not a huge public media organization. We have a staff of 40 people. And during these fire crises that unfortunately we're having every year now, we've gotten pretty good at figuring out how to take our small group of people, get out there in the field, and give people the coverage that they need. We're also not just television, but also a radio station at 91.1. Yeah. And so we're able to
say that again, because I might have talked over you.
Oh no, it's KRCB 91.1 is the radio station, right? And so with KRCB TV, which is channel 22, KPJK TV, which is channel 60, and then KRCB FM 91.1, we're able to bring the news, to everybody throughout the entire Bay Area, North Bay, South Bay, and then through radio as well. And it is challenging. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. What we tend to focus on the most is the resources that are available for people, right? So we're not so much about breaking news, but we're on every day talking about resources, road closures, shelters, places people can find help. That's really what we've been doing.
You mean you don't pound into people, if it bleeds, it leads?
Absolutely not. That's not what we're for. Yeah, we're not about that. And you can find that just about anywhere, right? So
you really can. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the radio, because that gets overlooked a lot. And I come from decades and decades of doing morning radio, morning shows across the country on commercial stations. And, so much hard work goes into that too. And it's all appreciated by different listeners and different viewers and different purveyors of content. So I love to honor that as well. How many languages do you broadcast in with the different stations?
It's interesting, right? So through our television stations, and so we'll talk TV here, we broadcast a variety of international services, right? So we broadcast NHK, that's Japan World Television, and we do that on both channel 22 and channel 60. Then we also broadcast Deutsche Welle from Germany. So you get a really good view of what's going on from the European perspective, and we do that on channel 60. And then we also present France 24, which is a 24-hour French service, which is also European, but they have a really international flair as well to that, because they tend to report from all the former French colonies. So they really have a world perspective as well. So, we're really proud to be able to do that, because here in the Bay Area, it's a very international place, and there are folks here from all over the world, and people, really appreciate having all of those different perspectives of the news. So we're very happy to provide that.
Most definitely. And it's a fun way to start getting acclimated to other languages when you're trying to learn them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to do that all the time when I was a kid. When they didn't offer other languages in school, I'd watch other shows in other languages and try to pick up the words. And then mom would take me to the library, and we'd check out books on that language. And then she'd, work with me to learn the words. I don't remember many of them now, but it's just such a great way to learn.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn. And I do want to mention, since we're talking about lifestyle programming again, on NHK World Japan, there are a lot of programs on that channel about cooking and travel and Japanese culture, in addition to, straight news coverage. And, that's something that I have found absolutely fascinating. And there's one program called Dining with the Chef, who's one of Japan's most famous chefs, in that country. And so we're able to watch that every week as well. So, it's a really good resource for folks to have.
And I don't know if I should bring this into it and, we can bypass it, but how can you afford to offer all of this?
Well,
I mean,
that's a great question. It's a great question. I think it's one that, the general public, I don't think, of course, thinks about very much. No. But what we do is we create these partnerships with these organizations, right? So a group of public television stations have come together to work with NHK World Japan, right? To get distribution across the country. So it gives us new content, and it also gives them an outlet, in a new country, right? In the United States. So it really is a very equal partnership. And it's the same with Deutsche Welle and with France 24 as well. They get distribution, and we get the ability to bring people a bunch of unique perspectives. And, I do want to throw one more thing in here before we move on to something else. We also air a channel called FNX, and that's the First Nations Experience. So that's 24/7 content by and for Native American people, First Peoples. So although that's not international in quality, it's something that we're very proud of, and that, gives a unique perspective of American life.
Oh, yes. I like the inclusiveness, definitely. So let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about you.
Okay.
How did you get into public television and ultimately president and CEO of Norcal Media, which is pretty impressive?
Well, thank you. I don't know how long you want this story to be. I'll try to keep it really short. When I was a kid, I did a lot of acting, a lot of modeling. And when I was a teenager, I got involved with this TV campaign. And so they had myself and a young lady that I went to school with. We were like the voice and the face of the school levy campaign, right, in our city. So we appeared in all these radio and TV spots over a period of like 6 months. And as we went through this, I thought, oh my God, I really like this. I really like this work, And even though I was in front of the camera at the time, I thought, this is really fascinating. So that led me to go into media studies in college. And then as soon as I graduated from college, I went straight to work at an NBC affiliate in their news department, and then produced some documentaries and shows, moved on to a Fox station and oversaw their marketing and promotion. And then I ended up at public television in 1995. And, I started as a producer, and then I became a program director, which is a fascinating job, still one of the best jobs I think out there. And because you're choosing the programs and deciding where those programs are going to, broadcast. And then moved on, I don't want to say up, but moved on, because all jobs are equal in my mind, but moved on to overseeing the creative work of the stations, right? And so when I came to Sonoma County to work for Norcal, that's the role I had here, was overseeing TV programming production, radio programming and production. And it's just something that I really love. And, our general manager, CEO and president, Nancy Dobbs, she retired last year. She founded the station 35 years ago, and she retired last year. And, I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time, I would say, as one of her right-hand people, and was able to move into the CEO job. So, I think that my role now is to make sure that I don't crash the thing in a wall, that we've built over all of these decades. And we have a really great staff and a really great team. So, I'm excited. I started on January 1st of 2020, and none of us knew what 2020 was going to be like.
What a year.
Yeah, what a year.
not just the normal challenges that there are out there from, competition and from different technology, and funding, issues, but my gosh, COVID-19,
Yeah.
insane. Uh, how did that change a lot of your programming? And did you notice certain viewership going up or certain viewership going down with certain COVID-19 offerings?
Right. That has been a very interesting time for us in the media. So at a time when people are saying that traditional media is sort of at the end of its life, right? And we're talking about new digital media, which we're also getting into, by the way. But at that moment that people said legacy media is sort of dead and gone, these kind of things that come up in our society, in our community, that's when we really shine, right, as local broadcasters. And so we were able to launch a weekly coronavirus show so that people all over the Bay Area, not just in the North Bay, were able to hear what their public health officials were saying, what their county supervisors, the mayors. We had all of those folks on so that people could tune in and they could ask questions directly to those officials. Yeah. And so we did that for a number of months through the spring and into the summertime. And now we've switched over to doing sort of shorter daily reports because COVID has become such a part of our lives now that those live hour-long programs, they really aren't necessary because most people are up to speed on what's going on. But I will tell you that viewership is up for public television. I can't speak for our commercial counterparts. I suspect they are too. But, people are home and people are watching the programming, and especially if it's local and it speaks to what's happening to them in their community, that's what local media can do that, CNN, Fox, C-SPAN, whatever, they look at a national level, which is valuable, but they can't look at, a county, a town, or a region.
And there is so much more updated technology now, and you've had Netflix for a while, but now you've got the streaming Facebook and Instagram and different things like that. So you are diving more into the streaming digital as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our coronavirus show is a good example. So that show aired live on TV. It also was simulcast live on the radio. And then at the same time, it was feeding out to a YouTube live channel, and it was also feeding out to a Facebook live channel. And interestingly, we were able to partner with a local commercial Spanish language radio station, and they did a live translation of that program on their air while it was happening. So we had all of these different ways of getting that information out to people. And it was a good learning experience for us. We've already been doing a lot of podcasting. We've been doing a lot of streaming content online. But, that live breaking news that people needed, that was new for us. And it was a really good experience to get that.
And sort of a go-to place when people are curious how to find more, what to watch, what to listen to, what to stream. Would that be norcalmedia.org?
NorcalPublicMedia.org. Yeah.
Sorry, NorcalPublicMedia.org.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we'll mention it again at the end, but NorcalPublicMedia.org. And then you can find out where to go, what to watch, where to listen to it.
Exactly. We have everything there, on the website so we can send people out. We also have a free app. It's the Norcal Public app, where you can stream the radio station, and you can also stream the television signal as well. So you can watch TV 24/7 right there on your phone, which is a fairly new thing that we've added. And it's been very, very successful. I mean, it's being adopted very, very quickly. People love it to be able to put their local channel and cast it up to their TV or watch it on any device that they want, which has been good.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And I could see you clearly had some love for the COVID shows, and you should be proud of that because at the time, there was so much fear and anxiety around it. And I'm not diminishing it now, but there was more in the beginning, and we needed that information, and we needed it as unvarnished as it could be. I can tell that's one of the things you're very proud of, and you should be. what are some of the other things throughout your career with public television that just hit your heart and you said, oh, that's why I do this?
Yeah, there's many things, right? I've been lucky to have like a 25-year career just in public media after I left commercial. So a couple examples. One is a show that we do called Bay Area Bountiful. It's about climate change, environmentalism, sustainability, and food and agriculture as well. So it's a mix of things, but it's all about, you know, our natural world and how we interact with that world. And that television series, and it's also a radio program, it's also a website, bayareabountiful.org, by the way. And I'm so proud of it because it really draws from what's happening in the Bay Area. You know, we talk to African-American farmers in the East Bay and about how they've been overlooked for loans. You know, we've talked to climate specialists about atmospheric rivers and how that affects, you know, our rainfall. We've talked to CAL FIRE and scientists about the drying of our environment. And we've done things like visit dairy farms and find out how they care for their cows. And we've done cooking segments and cheese making segments. So it's a fascinating program. And it's one that, you know, people really, really love because they can connect with it, you know, on this regional or local level. And I'm very proud of that. In addition to that, in the past, I mostly produced historical documentary programs. And that's something I enjoy too, because if you're living in a town and you see a documentary about the history of a neighborhood that you know, or a building that you've seen but you don't know very much about, or, you know, it really connects you to your past. And, you know, when people have that connection to their past, they can, you know, sort of connect the dots and make decisions about their future better. So I don't know. For me, it's all about community, and it's working with the community to give them things that make their lives better, that enhance their lives, make them smarter, make them think, and then hopefully make them act. And by act, I mean, we're not telling them what to do, but we're giving them information so that they can then decide what they're going to do. Whether it's, you know, giving them voting information so they can pick a candidate, or environmental information so that they can decide, you know, what they think about climate change.
And that's multi-layered community when you're bringing the past and the present together and the future in with it. You know, that's combining and uniting generations and philosophies, and again, helping with the community, because if we look back, then we want to look back and learn from it.
Right.
Be in the present, but apply it toward the future.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's when it comes to history programming, that's what we're all about. And, you know, when it comes to community building, you know, we've done lots of forums where people can come and talk about an issue that's facing a community. And those things I'm very proud of too, you know, those sort of live in the round programs that people learn a lot from. So, and there's many examples, but there's just a few. So there's a couple right there.
So it takes somebody with an investigative journalistic heart and not a love for material things, because you don't get paid. A lot of the people who want to get into investigative journalism, a commercial station, they're never going to get to do that story because it's not going to be, you know, sponsors aren't going to love it.
Right. There's a whole different dynamic. You're right. In public media, you know, we look at what the community needs, and then we take that need and we develop a program around it. We figure out which media is going to serve that topic best, what interaction is going to serve that topic best. And so another thing about public media that, you know, I'm proud of, and I think a good way of working, is that we answer to the people, you know, so we don't answer to the sponsors, right? And so we ask people, as you well know, we ask people a lot. I don't think too much, but a lot, if they would give to support public television during a pledge drive, or public radio during a pledge drive. And, you know, those membership dollars, that's the core of our budget. And so we know if we're serving people well, because we know if they're giving or they're not giving, right? So that's what we track. And it's the people of the community that are making it financially possible. So, we answer to them. So we answer to them and we're making shows for them. So I think that's the right relationship to have.
And it's such a huge difference when you don't have the sponsors to answer to, but you still have sponsorships from companies.
Right.
How have some of their attitudes changed over the years of what they'll allow or what they won't allow, what they'll allow their name to be attached to, or what they won't?
Yeah, I think, what we've seen in media in general, and also in public media, is that, in the beginning, if we're talking like, 1970s, 1980s, companies would give the money more from a charitable standpoint. And many still do. So I'm not discounting, but many still do that. But we see more and more companies today coming to us and looking at us as one wing of a marketing campaign, right? That they have. Mm-hmm. And so, and they think, oh, I want the demographic that show has, or I want the demographic that public radio program has. And we're not interested in that relationship. Now, if they want to do that sponsorship and we can thank them for their sponsorship and it serves them well and it helps support our programs, that's great. That's a great partnership. But if they want to, use our programs in some very crass way to attract consumers, that's not of interest to us. And I can tell you that many stations, including ours, all across the country, have turned down sponsorship deals over the years because they wanted too much commercial messaging, or they just wanted to push too much for sales, which we're certainly not going to do. And we also don't want to.
And I'm sure they've tried a lot for product placement.
Oh yeah, and product placement, that now there's something we can talk about. Product placement in lifestyle programming, right, is, I don't want to say it's a big problem, but that's something that's become very common in the commercial world, right? And it's something that we stay away from. But it's something that people who make foodstuffs or make tools for a building show or landscaping for a show. Yeah, that it's can be a difficult relationship to work through if they're just looking for product placement. That we're not about that. Yeah.
Well, that's got to be hard too, because do you have to cover all the labels of the food that they're making something with? Block out the airline of showing the person taking off and heading to Taiwan. Right. I'm sure there's a lot of accidental product placement that just is because living life, there are labels and manufacturers know that. And so they make their labels bigger and more iconic.
Right.
So they, you see red and white bullseye. Oh, you don't even have to see the name and you know what brand that is.
Right. I know.
So it's got to be harder and harder.
Yeah, it is harder and harder. We certainly don't try to hide anything, right? Because we're not about that either. But, knowing that somebody is trying to make that product placement and is trying to get that, I mean, we just don't want to work with that. But, sometimes it is, inevitable that you're going to see some labels and things, especially in a show where, you're traveling or you're going around the world. You can't hide every sign, you can't hide everything. But I think if you do watch public TV, you'll see that the chefs, when it comes to chefs on television, they rarely talk about the product that they're using, right? And the only reason they would is if there's some very interesting question about that. Like maybe it's a very hard to find product, right? A very rare product. So they may mention that just so people can find it. Or they may say, visit my website and you can learn more about those things. I mean, that's a very easy way to go about getting that information out there. Yeah.
So what are some of the changes maybe that you've noticed over the years of travel shows, cooking shows, some of the mainstays of public television that people adore and are still coming back for more?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things
Ways
that
to see them change.
right. There's a couple of things that are running parallel here, right? And this is what I find so fascinating. So I'm just going to own it here for a minute. And, you know, public television, as you mentioned earlier, they created lifestyle programming, right? So PBS created the cooking show, they created the travel show, they created the home improvement and building program, and the gardening show, just all of it, right? So, I mean, we have This Old House, Julia Child, Jacques Pepin, Victory Garden. I mean, all of these, you know, legacy programs. And in the beginning, you know, America through that time, you know, we'd gone through the post-war era, and here's the historian in me, blah, blah, blah. But we've gone through that post-war era where people, it was all about convenience, right? And it was all about packaged food, and it was all about processed food. And so after 25 or 30 years of this, people had lost touch with what it was like to just really get their hands into making things. Nobody was building things, nobody was planting things. And you reach the 1970s and PBS comes along here, or the 60s, and says, you know, oh, let's try to help people get back to that hands-on way of living, right? And so when Julia Child was cooking, if you watch Julia Child's old shows, Julia Child's really giving this step by step lesson that is much more lengthy than we see today in cooking television. And part of that is because she was sort of starting people out from scratch, right? And so people just weren't into, you know, what is this French cooking and what is this international flavor? It was all just, you know, roast meats and potatoes here in the United States. And so as people learned a lot and became much more worldly in the way they looked at food and the way their taste buds, you know, wanted things and reacted to things, the audience has become so much more knowledgeable about food. And so when you look at shows today, you know, they don't have to go into all the details of how you do this or how you do that. They're sort of assuming that the folks who are watching already sort of have that base knowledge. So I think the shows have gotten faster. You know, they make more dishes within a program. They make a whole meal within a program, or a whole day's worth of meals in a program, because the audience, they're there with them. So, you know, we're serving the audience because the audience is smarter, the audience is faster. And so we need to be as well. So I think you see that a lot too. And TV is having more fun with cooking, right? So PBS has stepped into that a little bit with like the British Baking Show, right? That is a really good example of sort of a competitive food program that's done in a really smart way. But for the most part, we don't go in much for reality TV on public television. And there's a lot of that out there as well. I mean, reality TV when it comes to cooking or building or, you know, things like that, pitting people against each other. We're you know, that kind of thing.
That's not my, I don't like people being against each other. I like them working together. That's more my thing. I enjoy that more. I'm not on edge.
Right. I agree.
So why do you think those shows have such staying power? Because maybe they've changed a little, but they've developed with viewers' taste, and people still want more and they want it now.
Right. My feeling about this, and I could be wrong, we could talk to some pop culture sociologist or something about this, but I think that people at heart, they just love making things, right? I mean, people love to create something. And especially in the technological lives that we lead now, it's so easy to live a life where you're not really making anything physically with your hands anymore. It's not to say that creating a wonderful visual piece in Photoshop isn't creative. It certainly is creative. You know, editing a video, for instance, is super creative, but there's something about making something with your hands or building something and looking at it and saying, you know, I did that, or making food and then sharing it with people. You know, there's something so primal and responsive and beautiful about that act of making something and sharing it with people. And again, in a way, it's all about building community and giving people the tools they need, right, to make those connections and do what they need to do. But I'll admit, sometimes I like to just sit on my couch and put up my feet and watch Sarah Moulton or Jacques Pepin or, somebody just make some food, because there's sort of this voyeuristic enjoyment in just watching that process, right? Even if you know you're never going to make a rack of lamb, but you're like, wow, this is so interesting, It's a knowledge-based thing. Oh, and then you can act smart. You can act smart too.
Right.
And you can go tell people, well, I know how to make a rack of lamb. I know, all that kind of stuff. So it's all about knowledge and sharing that knowledge.
But it opens up your mind too on more things, even more things that you want to try, even if you know you're never going to make it because you're afraid it won't come out right. You're like, oh, I want to order that. I want to find that on a menu somewhere and order that. So it opens up your taste that way too.
Absolutely.
And then you know more about it.
Right. And you know more about it, and your tastes develop over time, but they're never going to develop if you're not exposed to new things, right? And so that's important.
Exactly. So what are some of your personal favorite shows that you do like to just hang out on the couch and just kick back and say, okay, I don't want to think about anything. I want to enjoy my glass of whatever
Right.
and watch this. And it can be national, can be international, can be local. I want to hear them all.
Well, there's so many, I'm a real generalist, right? So there's so many things that I like. And when it comes to, lifestyle programming, for instance, I am still a huge watcher of This Old House. I mean, This Old House has been on forever. It's gone through many changes, but I'm still there for This Old House. I love that program so much. I love Masterpiece Theater and good drama, right? And Masterpiece Theater had become, well, I don't want to say a joke, but Masterpiece Theater had become a cultural icon of sort of snootiness, right? And then when Downton Abbey came along as part of that series, it opened a lot of people's eyes to say, oh, this is Masterpiece Theater, okay, And so that actually has been a nice boost for public television, because now there's this whole generation of people who have been exposed to those British dramas who've stuck with us, right? And they've watched Poldark and they've watched Queen Victoria, and they've stayed with us through these shows that perhaps they might not otherwise have watched if it wasn't for the breakout hit of Downton Abbey, So British drama is a big thing to me. And I'm also a huge science geek, and I love watching Nova and, all of the, whether it's, space and looking at, the universe, or whether it's animals or biology. There was just a show on the other night about gene therapy and using CRISPR to change genes. And it's a fascinating show. And, these are things that, and that wasn't a how-to show, by the way, but it was just right. But
my little lab.
right. Make your stuff in your own lab. But it's just, I stick with public television a lot. I mean, I was a fan of public TV before I became an employee of public TV. And I tell you what, if you go to interview for a job at public television, they're going to know right away whether you're a real consumer or not, right? Or how deep that you've gone into that content. But, and there are things that I like that are not on public TV as well, of course. But those are some of my favorite shows.
I always appreciated the fact that public television was willing to go into other galaxies and dimensions and universes and talk about black holes and things that the normal person didn't want to talk to me about. So right. I appreciate the fact that public television was a place where someone who thought they were a geek could hang out and not feel so geeky and feel, wait a minute, if someone's putting this show together and putting it out there and approving it, there are other people interested in things beyond the physical and things outside of our limited scope, which again is unifying. It comes back to community.
It does. It comes back to community all the time in public media. And, many of these big shows that we're very proud of because they are really good series and they've been on for decades and decades. Another thing that, I think we're all proud of in public TV is that, 40 odd years ago when a lot of these shows, were starting up, these are the shows that we've talked about. These are all shows that were created by, envisioned by, and produced by women, right? So Masterpiece Theater with Rebecca Eaton at the helm, has just been a fantastic series. American Experience, for its first decades of life, for decades and decades, was run by its creator. And also Nova, Nova was created by a woman. And these are amazing programs. And I think public television, beyond the screen, public television has always been a place where women and minorities and, people who did not have a voice in the beginning of media were able to find a voice and were able to create amazing, wonderful programming for people that I don't think they would have had the chance in commercial media, especially, 50 years ago. And so I think that, as a family of public media stations, we've kept that alive and strong, and it's a good place to be. And of course, I'm going to keep saying that through the whole interview because it's a great place to be and it's a great thing to watch.
It is. So being president and CEO, you must get bombarded with producers coming to you with content. It may not even be fully realized content yet, but at least something that they want to create. How do you handle that? What is your strategy for doing that? Do you go to dinner parties and say, I run a mortuary. I'm an insurance investor. Oh, you've got me confused with another Darren. Yeah.
Right. It's tempting, right? It's tempting.
Right.
But, one thing that's also great about local TV and local community is that, I'm on the air so much, right? I'm on TV asking for money so much. I'm on the air, my face is on the air all the time. So I know that I can't, hide any of that, nor would I want to. But to answer your question,
blame it on an evil twin.
Right, exactly, right. Or say, I don't make those decisions. But
I just read the cue cards. Sorry.
Right. It's that what you've touched on is actually, I think, one of the most interesting things about working in public media, right? As a content person, is that the community, again, we're going to go back to that, but members of the community have great ideas too about what could make fantastic programs. They have good ideas and a good way of thinking about whether it's a documentary about something meaningful in their lives or it's a lifestyle program, cooking, a travel program, whatever. So, we never discount what, let's say, the general public, would bring to the table, right? And so we have worked with professional producers who've been producing shows for decades, and we've presented those programs locally. And then we've also taken those programs nationwide, right, to public television so it could be aired all across the country, right? And that's another thing that we do at Norcal. And then on the other end of things, if you want to call it that, we'll have, let's say, a young TV producer, call us and say, oh, I have some ideas. And, we might look at her work and, talk a couple of times, have her come in, and then think, this person is really good. And maybe what they're bringing us isn't ready for prime time, as they say, but this individual is very talented. So why don't we give them a chance to produce, say, a 5 or 10 minute piece on climate change or water quality or, fire recovery, you know what I mean? And so give them a foot in the door so that they can start exploring and becoming better. And, some of the people that we've mentored over the years, they've gone on to produce, full TV series and have been very successful. So, I feel that that's part of our mission as well, is to bring the community to the airwaves And sometimes you can do that with a professional producer. Sometimes you can do that with somebody who just has an idea. So not many of them make it all the way through, but we do give we do open a lot of doors. Let's put it that way.
Oh, most definitely. And I think back to all the different markets that I've worked in when I was doing radio. Many times I was asked to come to PBS and be part of a pledge drive. And so I'm familiar with asking for money. And I remember I would try to do it with a sense of humor and not, try and, guilt people into doing it. And like, do you watch your British comedies? Do you like them? Well, then pay up. Because I've seen that approach. It never worked for me. But I also saw the difference in the quality of what that area was able to have as far as a studio-wise, what that public television station had at their disposal. And some of them were woefully small and woefully underfunded and had very little to work with. And I remember watching what they put out, and it was such a difference in quality. You could tell what the local shows were versus what would come out, across the wide scope of public television, and what would come out of Norcal public media that I'd be watching in Augusta, Georgia. So when I moved to San Francisco, I was like, wow, all these local shows are the national quality.
Yeah.
Duh, it's a lot of it's coming from you.
Right.
And you're able to put together such quality equipment and studio to be able to produce a production, to be able to do these shows that I was watching in Little Rock, Memphis. And the smaller the public TV stations were, the less they had to work with, the less resources. And then the bigger they got, the more they had, but still the quality was never like Norcal Public Media or something like that.
Yeah, I think geography is a big factor here, right? And so even though, we are small and we're always struggling for resources, like you said, which is very true for us as well.
Sure.
There's a geography factor too. And one thing that we really benefit from at Norcal is that we are here in the Bay Area, right? And let's just talk reality of numbers here. So if you walk down the street in San Francisco and start polling people, you're going to find a lot of creative people, right? So this region has a lot of great filmmakers, a lot of great videographers, a lot of great audio people and writers and script writers and lighting people. So we're so lucky to be able to say, hey, we have this great project. We don't have as much money as maybe you'll get paid by a bigger organization, but do you want to come and help us out? So we have this high quality of talent and individuals, right, who can contribute to what we're doing. So we're so lucky to have that, where a station in a maybe a less populated place or somewhere else in the country may not have those resources close at hand or available to them. And so, with their small team, they try their best to do what they can. And I'm sure they do fantastic work. But I would say, as you've, alluded to, we're super lucky because we have a lot of great folks who are in the business and who understand TV and filmmaking very well in the Bay Area. So the programs that we produce that go nationwide, Natural Heroes, The New Environmentalists, these are TV series that air on, PBS stations all across the country. And we also release, 6-10 documentaries a year that go nationwide, and stations put those on as well. And we're very proud of all those programs. So, I'm gonna chalk that one up to luck of geography. How's that? I'll say that. Yeah.
But we all know it's more than luck. It's a coming together of community.
That's right.
We cannot get away from talking about community. It's really kind of surprising to me how much everything comes back to community as we've been talking.
It's true. So, that's what public TV is all about. Yep.
Are there some things we haven't mentioned that Norcal Public Media does and has and puts out there? I think the app mentioning the app, that's,
Yeah.
I cannot wait to download that onto my phone.
Yeah, I think, that's the things that are different, are the digital platforms, right? So, I mean, we have channel 60 on TV, we have channel 22 on TV. So people in the Bay Area can watch both of those channels. And of course, through those channels, we offer all of those different services and international programs. And then on the radio, which is situated up here in Sonoma County, we do live local music all the time, which a lot of people, don't know about. Maybe they listen to NPR Morning Edition, they listen to the news in the afternoon, but it's the music that really makes us unique. It's the music that we bring people live with North Bay musicians on the air who aren't just playing, but they also come in and volunteer to DJ, and host programs. So, the radio station is really a very hyper local community hub that we're very proud of. But on the digital side, here's some things that people may not know, and I hope that they know. Okay, so first is the app that you mentioned. So the Norcal Public app. If folks download that for free, you can watch the TV station, you can listen to the radio station, but then you can also watch like all of those breaking news updates that we do for fire coverage, or pieces that we do about the environment. So all of those, so you can like do video on demand, right? For that. The other thing that people may not know is that we produce a podcast that's a nationwide podcast. It's called Living Downstream. And so Living Downstream just won Best Small Market Podcast of the Year last year, which was great, at the Public Radio Awards. So we're very proud of that. And Living Downstream looks at environmental justice and how people who are poor, people of color, people in rural communities are often taken advantage of by the government, by corporations. So we're talking about water quality, we're talking about waste disposal, in desert areas that affect Native American communities.
Oh.
And so it's a really, really great series, and it looks at a topic that, is rarely, looked at in a long form version. So, I really do hope that people will check out Living Downstream. It's a great podcast, and you can find it at NPR One, which is a free app, and you can find it on our app too, at the Norcal Public app. So those are a couple of interesting things.
Does your app have a donate now button?
No,
it should.
Yes, it does. It does. It's in the upper right-hand corner and it's red. So yeah.
Just for anyone who, feels like spreading the love.
Absolutely. We always make sure that the donate button is there on all of our digital properties. So website.
And you should. No, you should.
Exactly.
So what do you see for the future of Norcal Public Media?
I wish that I knew in detail what that future was,
then you would have been able to predict COVID.
Right, exactly. You'd know so much. But right. I think in general, to get back to our theme, I mean, as long as we are serving the community to help it develop and learn and grow in the way that it needs and wants to, right? As a collective, as a community, as all of us together. If we can reflect that back on the airwaves, if we can ask people what they need and make sure that we provide it. And we are what we call a convener and a connector, right? So we hold events that bring people together to think about issues. On the air, of course, people come together in, a virtual way to think about and learn about issues, like you said, with science, like-minded people come to those programs. So, I mean, that's the core of what we do. So how we do it is important, but it's of less importance to me than what we're doing, how we do it, because we will be there with video streaming. We'll be there with video on demand. PBS has launched a nationwide streaming on pbs.org. So you can find your local station on pbs.org. We're working with providers, who provide streams, and a lot of those are in negotiations now. So I guess what I'm saying is we're going to be everywhere we need to be. and we're going to be on every platform where people can find us, because we want to make sure that people find us. But whatever those platforms are, whatever that technology is, it's really about doing what the community needs us to do. And so we're much more locally focused than nationally focused. And we'll continue to do that in whatever form we exist or whatever the future brings our way.
Very nice. Do you have any last words, anything you'd like to leave people with? Any thoughts, any knowledge?
Oh my, yeah, that's such a big question. It is, but
I know.
Yeah, it is. It's a big question, but I think that, one thing that I think is very important for all of us, right, is this media literacy that we need to develop more than ever now. As things become more complicated with social media and with video manipulation and deep fakes and, all of these things that are now technologically possible, the world has always been a confusing place, right? But now there's this digital technological way to confuse people more. And, it's very important that folks become very, hyper aware of media and how it's used and how it's consumed. Now, a lot of that has to do with knowing who to trust, right? Mm-hmm. So, we all know that, like, there are local commercial stations here in San Francisco region, right, that I go to often as a consumer because I trust them and I trust those anchors and I trust those, you know what I mean? I trust those folks. And people come to us for the same reason, because we're a trusted source of information. So social media has really sort of jumbled that whole bucket of media around, right? So you may see a video or a post or a picture and you don't really know where it's coming from. And that is so dangerous. So I think when we're looking, and I don't want to end on a downer here, right? But I think as we look at the future of media, all of us need to be very, very aware of that and working very, very hard together to make sure that people do have a place to go that is trusted. Public media is certainly one of those places. But in addition to that, we all just need to be very aware of it and be working very hard to make sure that the information that people that they get is true, it's factual, and that they can rely on it. So that is going to be, I think, the next challenge of public media, is to find a way to help make that happen, because that's what we're all about.
And I mean, just as technology is changing for the way you create content and broadcast the content, technology has changed for the way things are faked, mm-hmm. the way they, fraud is put out there. Mm-hmm. The deception in everything, deception in broadcasting, in advertising, in people being scammed. So the technology, I think in some cases, starts with the scammers. Mm-hmm. And so they're ahead of the boat a lot of times. Right. And so you're so correct that you really have to be vigilant in being aware of what you're seeing, watching, getting over an email, getting through your phone, the different ways people can reach you, and the ways they can get in there and manipulate the data into anything they want it to say, so you'll believe it and either give them your credit card or vote a certain way or not understand a proposition. I mean, it spans everything. Yeah. So I think you're right. People need to be more careful than ever. And so for you to be a trusted source where you fully vet mm-hmm. everybody and everything is a relief, because it's like, whew, you're doing that. Yeah. So, and it's not that I am going to then relax and not be aware, but I just, like you said, a trusted resource. I can just take a breath and go, okay, what do they say? What's the unvarnished truth here? What are people asking, and what's the response? Mm-hmm. That helps. That's a relief to the community.
Right. It's true. Our tagline is trusted, independent, essential. That's a Norcal Public.
There we go.
And that's what we try to live up to, and I hope that we do. And we are a trusted source. And if you're trying to figure out what's factual and what's not, come to public media. because that's where you know you're going to get the real deal. So,
See, we ended on a high note.
good. I'm glad.
Yay! Thank you so much, Darren LaShelle, President and CEO of Northern California Public Media, Norcal Public Media. So that's norcalpublicmedia.org. And I thank you for being here for Taste TV and the Media Tastemakers Summit. I'm Charly Kayle. Have a great
Charly,
day.
thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.